Okay, so we're back. I'll ask my question. So I wanted to ask you, Joe, because you've been doing Wei Chi, predominantly Wei Chi for a long time, but there was a time that you kind of put it aside and you kind of took a different avenue for a while, but you eventually kind of came back to Wei Chi. So I guess the question is, when you left Wei Chi, I know there was probably a bunch of different reasons why you kind of put it in the back burner. But at that point in time, you could have done, you've been exposed to a lot of different things between Chinese martial arts and whatever at that time. So what drew you to Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, which you did for a long time and actually got a black belt in, which is not so easy to do. And then from that, what made you kind of revert back to your roots, if you will? Because now what you're kind of doing is it has influences of all that stuff, but the foundation is kind of more Wei Chi Ru-esque. So what kind of made you go through all that?
So, when I was a kid, I was 12 and my parents, put my brother and myself in the kids class in John Zakastal's dojo in Burlington, Massachusetts at the time. And my dad was doing Wei Chi Ru with John. It was weird. Wei Chi Ru to me was always, initially as a kid was something that was not like what I thought martial arts would be or is, because it was very static and stiff. Even as a kid, I thought, like Bruce Lee moves this way, and we're doing these things that don't look like kind of Bruce Lee or the Kung Fu movie stuff. But I saw the value in the traditional sense of training, in the modern style of Wei Chi Ru, I guess, second generation, third generation, and it kind of gave me some understanding of how to fight and stuff. But realistically, it wasn't until '93, and I was a good Wei Chi Ru student. I was very sincere, and I worked really hard. I really did. In '89, John Zakastal, myself, and Dave Wojcik opened up a dojo, Wei Chi Ru dojo in Lowell, Massachusetts. And so, John was the instructor, but I was training with Walter Matson at the time also. So I was training with John and Walter, but I was going to Walter's advanced class, which was Yondan and up at the time on Tuesday nights. And, but it wasn't until '93 when we were over, I think it was Dave's house, and saw the Ultimate Fighting Championship. And I was like, this can't happen. This can't be, this doesn't make sense. We could just kick them and just punch them and just kind of beat them. And the skinny Brazilian whom I've met and actually had a chance to train with once, Boyce, he just kind of beat up all these bigger, stronger, more fierce looking guys. So that kind of was a change. And it wasn't until like in '97, I started training in Boston Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. At the time in '97, the dojo closed. We closed the dojo for various reasons, but the way we were doing Wei Chi Ru was very, very hard. And it wasn't conducive to keeping people enrolled. It was just, like people just didn't want to get pounded like that, so. And it was also around '97, '96, '97, I started, I met Tim and started training with Tim Cartmel, who was a big influence. So Tim kind of reinforced the Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu training. Little did I know that like the principles of good martial arts are contained in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, in Chinese martial arts, and in essence in Wei Chi Ru. But I never put everything together at that point in time. So I started kind of experimenting, and I was teaching at a Goju-Ru dojo. I was renting a Goju-Ru dojo, part of it, teaching this kind of hybrid kind of Wei Chi Ru Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. It was kind of like mixed martial arts, I guess, in more of a traditional mixed martial arts style, if there's such thing. Kind of like what Kudo is in Japan, like, and I got called by one of the Weichi-Ryu higher ups in the Yokukai, and he told me, you can't teach. I was like, well, I was teaching Weichi-Ryu for years in the Weichi-Ryu dojo, and now I'm doing this. And I said, I'm not teaching Weichi-Ryu, I'm teaching this kind of like thing that, and he's like, I forbid you for teaching. And I told him to go what I thought about that. And then he said, say, I kind of I burned a bridge, and I'm fine with it. I blew it up, destroyed it. Because I kind of felt always at the time that what I was searching for a long time was, kind of like, and I'm just going to say it, here I am with advanced degrees in university, and, some guy is telling me just to beat my shin on a tree, 1,000 times. And I'm thinking there's more scientific ways to approach training. I never really thought of it like that then, but that's what, was kind of always in the back of my mind, even though I could never articulate that at the time. And so that kind of went that way. I trained privately, took private lessons for several years at Sitian Tong, doing Muay Thai in Mark Delagrati's gym in Somerville, Massachusetts. Excellent place, great place. Boston Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, Mass BJJ. Those are the two Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu schools that I got my belt progression through. And Roberto gave me my black belt, Roberto Maya. Nate also gave me Nate Ryan gave me a brown belt, I think. And then I, was training back at Roberto's, and he gave me my black belt. But all the while I was still training with Tim, even though Tim lived 3,000 miles away, I would still, train with Tim. So Tim always has had this influence over the last 26 years. Not so much of the techniques and stuff like that, but all about pulling things apart and learning and trying to analyze things through principle-based and athletic movements. So like a lot of like Chinese martial arts, like the internal styles that I've done with Tim, the Xingyi and the Bagua specifically, whether it's Sun style Bagua or like the swing body stuff that, I recently learned. Or the Xingyi 5, the elements, it's all athletics. It's all athletic movements. And so it's all, Chinese martial artists wouldn't say, this is an athletic stance. This is a hinge. They would call it like Hua, they would call something else. Like, my son, Luke, as you know, like has put the scientific Western kind of definitions on all this stuff. So what ended up happening was I started working out from teaching that hybrid class in Lowell. I was doing private lessons over at Mickey's gym and Mickey Ward's gym in North Chelmsford at the time. It was the old Gold's gym there. He had a boxing gym on the second floor upstairs. And so I started working with Sean Eklund a lot, kind of really getting into boxing, which I think is a fantastic art. And so from there, Sean and I opened a boxing gym in Westford, Massachusetts. Sean still owns the gym, but all the while I've been trying to connect dots, and so it's like different martial arts are just based, if they're good, and they're based on physics principles and categorized by sound efficient principles of motion and movement, and so how I got back into Weichi was because I always kind of liked it. And so I got to train with Buzz Durkin up at his dojo, and he's super nice guy. and the folks in his organization are really nice. So I've got to train with a couple of different Weichi-Ryu organizations, even though there's like 37, but there's different organizations, good guys. But it wasn't until you and I went to Okinawa that when we met, Seizan Sensei, even though he wasn't saying things as the same way as exactly what Tim was saying, there was a lot of synergy in how they were approaching Weichi-Ryu. And so, Seizan Sensei, learned from Toyama Sensei. He learned from other guys too, but Toyama Sensei for sure. It was, last 12 years of he basically trained with Toyama Sensei just about every night for 12 years. And Toyama Sensei was this kind of recluse kind of dude that everybody sees him doing Sandai Ryu with, like the shoulders and doing all that stuff with the beard. But he was Shinjo Kiyoheidi's father was in Toyama Sensei were best buddies. And so Shinjo Sensei today, kind of in Toyama Sensei were also very, very close. And if you look at like that organization's ways of opening up, you could see some of the old style as well as the modern style. I'll say second generation, the heavy second generation influenced by Kanai Weichi and Takamiyagi and in Takara Sensei and a lot of those guys. So in that kind of influenced Nakahoto, Yanamini, all those guys, really good guys that I've had the opportunity, and you have, at times to train with for brief periods of time. But I went back, and so what ended up happening was it was simply simple as that I felt that it finally felt like home, or something that I could bite into. Because it was like almost marrying the principles that what Tim has been teaching me throughout the last 25 years, Chinese martial arts. And then what finally Seizan Sensei is like, yeah, we don't do that. We not rock hard. We're Yarakaza, where we're looking at like this firm flexibility, like kind of like a rubber band. There's a difference between being concrete and a rubber band. And stuff like that. So timing, all that kind of stuff. Even in the Sanchin Dachi, which is in the old style, compared to Santi, which is like, if you look at it in Xingyi Chinese, a Santi stance, a Sanchin Dachi, there's similarities there, where it's not like front foot heavy, from a boxing perspective, front foot heavy is kind of bad. For all the old timers, if you look at like bare knuckle boxing, they're all back foot heavy. There's a reason for that. And so the old style of Weichi-Ryu is back foot kind of heavy, and Santi is kind of like back foot heavy, if you want to look at it that way. So, but so that's kind of like how I got there, is like all through these things. And along the way, I've met everybody from, Hickson, Gracie, Hoyce, of course. Horian Gracie was very nice to me also. Hickson and Horian were very, very great, very, very nice to me from a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu perspective. I met a lot of great boxers. Obviously, Mickey Ward, the former welterweight champion of the world, and like the bunch of different guys like that. Mark Delagrati and those guys down at Sitiantong were great. Jake Steinman I worked with a lot privately. Drake was phenomenal. Nate, Ryan, Patrick, Barry, Roberto Maya up here in the Northeast, and then you got Henzo, and you got all these different guys that I've had the experience with, as well as like a lot of the guys out in the West Coast. And there's so many people that like have helped me.
Well, I think that's kind of like interesting a story, because you said, oh, it was as simple as that, but it wasn't so simple, because you went through a lot of different things to really put those pieces together. And I think that's what's kind of interesting, is because a lot of people, and there's nothing wrong with it. Some people will do, like say, we'll use Weiqi for an example. Like, you do that and you do that for years and years and years, and that's all you do. And you'll get really good at it. And that's okay. But it's kind of, you really stepped out of that box and said, all right, wait a minute, there may be more to this. And I think you had to do all those different things to really kind of to see what was the whole picture of what it could be. I'm going to go
For
out on
me,
a limb and try to do like a really bad example. If you do something just one way, all it, like Weiqi, for use that example again, for 50 years, you'll see it this way. You'll see the pen this way, and that's all you'll see. But doing all that other stuff, you actually saw the full view of the pen and what it could actually do. I don't know if that's a really good example, but
yeah, I mean,
I think that's important for people to kind of really like look at things differently and just kind of say, okay, whether it's through cross training or just looking at your style differently. I don't know if you agree with that or not, but
no, I do. I mean, and it wasn't easy too, because you have all these relationships, especially in the traditional, like in the Weiqi community. It's very cliquey, like this organization, that organization. We know how to do, it gets petty, and this is where I have the big complaint about traditional styles. Because if they always revert back to principle base, then there's then they can figure out what's right and wrong. If they always rely on, well, so and so told me how to do it this way, so therefore it's right, then you get then it's like it's no, then you just kind of like bickering, and it's not, you're like, the objective should be look for the truth. Like, what does it mean? Like, you and I can do the same exact stance. You're like a foot taller than me, for crying out loud. And it should look differently, but as long as you're like, if we drew a biomechanic, picture of what you were doing and what I did, hopefully they would be exactly the same, but you throw on all the muscles and the skin shell, and it looks different, but the power production should be the same based upon biomechanics. So, but for me, it was tough because it was emotional, like leaving Weiqi after doing that for a long time. And I drank the fucking Kool-Aid. I did. It was like, it's everything's in the Weiqi. Yeah. It's like, and then these guys are like, getting, blue belts, tooling up, not even blue belts, tooling up guys. I'm like, oh, that's kind of a, that's kind of like, oh, you're now your bubbles burst, and now either you have to like not believe it, or deny it psychologically, or you have to kind of like, let me go take a look at what that is, and let me see what why. And so that's what I chose to do. But along the way, I lost friends too, so, and that's why like I always reverted back. The biggest thing that Tim taught me was about concepts, principles. That was the biggest thing. It wasn't techniques. As a matter of fact, he'll say, like one of the interesting things is internal Chinese martial arts start soft, and they eventually move to the middle, into being more hard, and then the hard arts, the external arts, start hard, and they eventually move more into the middle to be more soft. And that's where you should, the balance is where you should, so that half hard, half soft bullshit of like, I'm hard, but I'm soft on the inside. I'm hard. It's like like, it's just like, it's like sometimes you're athletic, sometimes you're hard, sometimes you're stiff, sometimes you're not, so it's like, so.
Do you think like you started putting this stuff together when you were doing jujitsu, or was it after that?
I think it was after. I think it was during the boxing, when I owned the boxing gym, and I had time to really like kind of really kind of figure things out. Because when I was teaching boxing, I mean, like very quickly you have to, the progression is very quickly into like sparring.
Hmm.
And so you have to get very efficient at like, like teaching. Like, let me give you an example. Traditional Wei Chiru. You could go there for freaking 5 years and not spar once. And then the sparring you're doing is patty cake. It's like, it's stupid. It's so stupid. You look like the Michelin man before you get in, because it's business, right? So it's like, don't hurt him. Don't hurt him physically. Don't hurt him emotionally. Because if you hurt him emotionally, he might not come back and pay me my X amount of money a month.
Right. Yep.
In a boxing gym, no one gives a fuck about that. So it's like this, you'll hear, you've heard it before in the gym, glove up, buddy, glove up, and so like, now you're going on puppies, like glove up, and so the process is like, in a very short time, if people want to do some rounds, you will be doing rounds. So you have to teach very, very efficiently. And how do you do that? Not by teaching 10,000 techniques, but by teaching concepts, principles of movement. Okay, like cut an angle. So what does that mean? Oh, maybe I'm slipping. You're cutting an angle, changing levels, cutting an angle, pivoting out, whatever it is. So that's when it started really clicking for me, pulling everything together.
Now, do you think if I'm trying to see how I can ask this, do you think you could do the same thing? Like, and say, like, let's say we'll take Wei Chiru. Do you think the same thing could have happened in Wei Chiru if there was, because you get some of like the other guys like, oh, we sparred all the time and all that. Do you think if there was more, I'll say, like our term, realistic sparring, do you think like some of that would come in Wei Chiru, or do you think it's just not going to happen just because of, like you say, just kind of the danger of someone getting hurt? Does that make sense?
I think yeah, it does. So like, here's how I see things. I think you will get different. So what do you call sparring, right? So it's like, so now you have to define it. You have to define parameters. Right. Sparring is, are we wearing, mixed martial art gloves, maybe some shin pads, mouthpiece, banging it up. Can I clinch with you? Can I take you down? Once I take you down, can I kick you or bang you off the floor or submit you? Yep. Yes or no? Is that sparring?
If you're not doing that, then you're taking an element away of it. Yeah. If you're not doing that, if you're not clinching or whatever. Yeah.
You're right. So now you're defining like, so in like in a traditional Wei Chiru dojo, what are you going to do? You're going to kick and punch. They don't even throw.
Right.
So like, and they don't even clinch. So, okay. So now what do we, is that sparring? That you could define that as sparring. Now, is that efficient? Is that what you want to do? Are you fooling yourself? Because, some of the drills we did yesterday, how fast did the guy clinch up with you?
Oh yeah. Yeah.
I mean, you're like, you have a wingspan of a condor. And still people could get in there and clinch with you eventually. You watch any professional boxing match.
Right. See
how many times people clinch. You watch any mixed martial art. See how much time they clinch. So, this crap about like, no one's ever going to clinch with me. Never mind take me down.
Yeah.
So how are you defining? So to answer your question is, how do you define sparring? And if you define it only as punching and kicking, then those guys will get pretty good at punching and kicking. If you let them get good at punching and kicking, but you have to practice doing that, spar, to get good at sparring. You can't. It's like this. I can dribble a basketball for hours and hours and hours on end, but if you put me in a basketball game without I just practice dribbling basketball. Then people, okay, Joe, you're over there and you're going to play basketball and you're going to dribble the ball up court. But I never felt that pressure of someone trying to steal the ball as I'm dribbling the ball. Guess what? My ball handling skills are kind of crappy because, I can dribble the ball really well. I might have like all these fancy techniques, but I don't know how to under pressure, Right. So, and it's the same thing in traditional martial arts. They do kata, and it's questionable whether they do kata correctly. Okay, that's another story. but they do kata and then they do these 2-man drills.
Hmm.
And it's like, okay, now go spar. And they look like shit. And you go like this, well, what do you expect? So can they get good? Yeah, if you let them spar, but you're not going to let them spar like that, because then you're running a dojo like what we had back in Lowell.
Mhm.
And we had 22 people that would come in and, like, you know what I'm saying? Guess
Yeah.
what?
Yeah.
It's tough to pay. It's tough to pay the rent.
Right. Yeah. If you want to be, yeah. If you want to do it a business and do it as a, as your livelihood, then yeah, you got to try to keep, you're always got to be bringing more people in.
Have birthday parties. I don't want any fucking birthday parties. Have birthday parties, have film nights, have this, have that, have a fucking dance recital at the end of the year for your fucking belt promotion. I got promoted in Brazilian jiu-jitsu, and this is what they did. Like, Roberto just threw a blue belt at me. Hey, you're a blue belt now. I was like, okay, I'm a blue belt. And then I put on the blue belt, and everybody wanted to beat the crap out of the new blue belt, right? So it's like, that belt was heavy. And so, even, the black belt ceremony was like, other people got promoted to black belt with me too. That was cool, but it was in the school. It wasn't like a dance recital.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? It was something like you earned it, and it was like, that was cool, and it was like private. Do you know what I'm saying? It was like with the guys, like that you went through this process with. And that's one thing I liked about, with how John Zakastal and Walter did there. It was like, you went up for the belt test, you did the belt test thing, and that was it. You get promoted or not,
Mhm.
Yeah, that was good. So that was good. So, but so it's different running a business or not, so big time difference, so
Do you think you can really like run a business and do it and teach it? I want to say, all right, you're referencing the name, so I should just come out right out and say it, right? So do you think you can run it as a business and actually be kind of legit, or do you think you're just always going to lose something if you're trying to run it as a business?
you can't run it like a business and be legit. And I'll tell you, and I don't, people say, oh, you're, fuck you, Joe, whatever, you don't know, like, here's the deal. Boxing gyms, best boxing gym in the world, like the oldest one in the United States, Gleason's gym, or you go out to Wild Card, Freddie Roach's gym, or you go to any fight school and stuff like that. What they do is they'll have these programs to, like, kind of supplement, keep the doors open. But if you really want to train fighters, it's a tough business to make money.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why in Okinawa, prior to the Japanese, and this is what they did in Uechi-Ryu too, and they did this other traditional arts. It was like this American serviceman. It was like, bing, 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 we can make some money, right? And so it's like, prior to that, you were going over some guy's house and training in his backyard,
right?
And it was like, and then you could do anything train any way you wanted. It wasn't like, oh, we have to do this, and this, so you can get a black belt, so you can keep on coming and pay me. Yeah. And it was like, no, dude. You go over, like, you go over so-and-so's house and you train, and that's it. And same thing in a boxing gym, same thing in a mixed martial arts gym. I mean, if you really, really, really go to a park where the guy's teaching, like what Tim would do in China, he'd go over to, Liang Keichan, like, is one of the greatest Shingi. He was one of the greatest Shingi guys that ever lived. Like, like, the guy really literally killed dudes during the Cultural Revolution, killed people with his hands, right? So, and they should have killed him, but they put him in Chinese, what do you call it? Reform school, something like that. But he was batshit crazy, so they couldn't change. But Tim trained with him once they, let him be a janitor at the end of his life, and for two years basically. And Liang Kechuan, like, mad martial arts skills, but he was never going to mass produce Shingi, because you can't, because it has to be. You can't mass produce it, because you have to look at everybody as a physics project, in a emotional physics project. So you go like this. he's 6'4", his temperament is this, he's like this, and like, yeah, you have a framework of like the style, like saying like, wait, you read a framework, but you're going to be different than me. That's not to say that the biomechanics should be the same. They should, but you should be also giving guys, like that individual thing. And you can't like fucking 40 people in a dojo, like you walk up and down the aisles and you go like this. Come on, man. You go like this.
That's important.
Okay, whatever. For me, it was important. Some people like, whatever. Some people like, that's cool if they, they're very happy with what they're doing.
Oh, sure.
And, that's cool. But for me, it was very important to kind of take this journey. Because now I know exactly why I'm doing what I'm doing.
Right.
And now I have like an understanding of where I want to be going and how I can keep on improving. So it was really, really important for me to go through this. So, but it's not for everybody. So.
True. Right. It was easier when we're doing it, as they say, right?
Yeah, not too many people would have done what I've gone through. Nate Ryan said to me, it's pretty funny. Nate, who owns Mass BJJ, and I was taking a private lesson with him just recently. Nate's a super good guy. I recommend the school, but Nate said to me, I said, I'm doing the traditional karate thing, but it's really kind of like it's full circle kind of deal for me. He's like, he says, Joe, he says, you kind of done it all, he says, you're one of the few guys that actually knows why they're doing what they're doing, for real. So it was a nice thing that Nate said to me. And I have a lot of respect for Nate. He's a good dude. So well, we'll get, I want to get him.
I was going to say, if he's listening, we'd love to have you on here. So,
Get it on. Well, thanks for the time, Eric. I appreciate it.
All right. Thank you, Joe.
All right. And
always a pleasure.
Yep.
Everyone's out there watching. I'm going to throw it out there. If people have questions or whatever, definitely comment. We're happy to hear from anyone. If there's anything you want to hear about, let us know. If you have questions about what Joe's doing, definitely let us know. I'll vouch for him. He's a great guy. You definitely want to learn from him. So.
Everybody's welcome. Seriously. I mean, like I got an open door policy. Just don't be a jerk.
That's that's the bottom line.
It's pretty simple. Don't be a jerk. I'll work with anybody.